Hello and welcome back to Stop and Go F1 for this, our driver ratings for the Miami Grand Prix. If you haven't seen one of these before, we're going to give each driver a score between 1 and 10. Before we do that though, remember to like and subscribe, and a huge shout out to the members: Dakota, The Joyous James, Robin Myers, Cinnamon Strudel, Michael Johnson, Mr. Eurovision 1986, Philip, Doganzik, Flandy Skick, and No Edam on Sandwiches. If you want to become a member, click the link in the description either on YouTube or on the Patreon. Right, it is a sprint race weekend, which means what we're going to do, we're going to give them a score out of 10 for the sprint, we're going to give them a score out of 10 for the race, we're going to take an average. That average is a weighted average with more weight towards the main race than the sprint race. That weighted average will be their overall score. With that being explained, let's get down to this. Let's get down to business with the Stake F1 Team Kick Sauber cars and with Gabriele Bortoleto, who in the sprint race went from 18th to 15th, then in the main race started 13th, but eventually would DNF with I believe it was an engine failure or hydraulics failure, a mechanical failure of sorts. I mean, a relatively anonymous race for Bortoleto yet again, which is a shame to see because I am a big fan of his. I thought he was fantastic in the junior series. But to be fair, in that Stake F1 Team Kick Sauber car, there isn't really much you can do. I think it's better than it was last year, but it's still not great. For the sprint, I gave him a 6. For the main race, I gave him a 5. Overall, we're going to have an average of a 5 for Bortoleto. His teammate, though, Nico Hülkenberg, a fantastic qualifying to be 11th place, and would convert that to a fantastic 9th place. I mean, benefited from the ridiculous amount of penalties that happened at the end of that sprint race, and also it being behind a safety car, but nonetheless, just one position away from scoring a point in the sprint. Then in the main race, wasn't too bad either. Qualified in 16th, ended up finishing in 14th. Again, we know how great Nico Hülkenberg is. We've seen it many, many times, especially in his recent times in the Haas. He was absolutely fantastic, which goes to show how bad this car is, that even he can very rarely get anything out of it. For the sprint, I gave him a 10. I thought going from 11th to 9th in the Sauber car was fantastic. Main race was a 7, so overall an 8 out of 10 for Nico Hülkenberg. But up next is my driver of the weekend. My goodness, what a man Alex Albon is. A fantastic weekend. I would say almost a perfect weekend. So, in the sprint race, he qualified 8th, finished 5th, then got one of the most ridiculous penalties I've ever seen in my life to be demoted down to 11th. Then in the main race itself, qualified 7th and finished in 5th place. I'm giving him a 10 for both races, giving him an average of a 10, because I do not care about the penalty he received in the sprint, because it was ridiculous for falling too far behind safety car whilst trying to be cautious around the safety car when the race ends behind the safety car, so it has no impact on the race whatsoever. Utterly, utterly ridiculous. It's the stupidest penalty I've seen in quite some time. So I'm going to pretend he finished 5th, and I'm going to give him a 10. And then he would have finished 5th in both races, which was fantastic. I mean, the Williams had some tremendous pace this weekend, but even with that tremendous pace, he did a wonderful job, and there were some beautiful overtakes out there as well. Really, really good stuff. Driver of the day for me on the Sunday, driver of the weekend, absolutely perfect from Alexander Albon. Great stuff. Carlos Sainz now. In the sprint, he went from 15th to a DNF. Then in the main race, qualified 6th, but ended up in 9th, kind of just behind those squabbling Ferraris towards the end there. I'm not sure if maybe he got caught out with the virtual safety car or what happened there. Showed good pace at times, but really was just nowhere near his teammates. For the sprint, I gave him a 4. For the main race, I gave him a 7. It's a 6 for old Carlos Sainz. Isaac Hadjar had a good one as well, to be fair. Walked away with no points on the weekend, but was just consistently very good. Qualified 9th for the sprint, but that turned into a 10th place. Then the main race itself, qualified 11th, finished in 11th, just outside the points. So overall, I thought he did very well. He just continues to have a consistently good rookie season. I mean, obviously there was the crash in Australia before the race began, but aside from that, you can't really point at anything he's done and said that was a negative. He's just been consistently very, very good. And hopefully they don't rush him up to the Red Bull team too quickly and ruin his career, because I think he's doing relatively well. I gave him an 8 for both races. It's an 8 out of 10 on the weekend. Liam Lawson, another bad one for him, it has to be said. So in the sprint, he qualifies 14th. He finishes 8th, but then gets a penalty for the collision with Fernando Alonso, which ended Alonso's race. I gave him a 2 out of 10 for the sprint. Then in the main race itself, qualifies 15th, gets into that turn 1 collision with Doohan. I think that was just a racing incident, no real blame either way there. I gave him a 4 on that though, so overall it is a 3 out of 10 for Liam Lawson. A bad season, continues to go quite badly. Oliver Bearman now. Oliver Bearman, 2 bad qualifyings, but it was an okay race, I guess. I mean, he qualified 19th in the sprint, finished 9th, but then got a 5-second penalty for an unsafe release. Of course, unsafe release not really his fault, but there you go. I gave him a 7 out of 10 for that. Then another qualifying of 19th for the main race. I think he actually qualified 20th, but then it was the pit lane start for Gasly, which pushed him up the same way I think the pit lane start for Tsunoda pushed him up in the sprint. So he would start 19th, but again, mechanical issue ends his race. I gave him a 5 there, a 6 out of 10. I've got a hair in my mouth. There you go. A 6 out of 10 overall for Ollie Bearman, who, is showing to be very, very good. But if we look at his results, I mean, it's just like he needs to improve his qualifying. That's where he needs to look at, and I think he knows it as well as anyone does, but that is his downfall at the minute. I mean, if we look here, this is his stats for this year, and he's got 20th in Australia, 17th in China, a 10th in Japan, 20th in Bahrain, 19th Saudi Arabia, 19th Miami. That's not including sprint races, of course. But, some very good recovery drives from 20th to 10th in Bahrain, 17th to 8th in China. But, you improve this, and this comes along with it as well. So a definite area of improvement is visible there in terms of qualifying pace. But overall, I think Ollie Bearman doing a wonderful job with what he's got in terms of race pace. But yes, 6 out of 10 for him on the day. Let's go across now to Esteban Ocon. Here he is. And a okay weekend, I guess. In the sprint, he went from 12th to 12th. I gave him a 5. In the main race, a good qualifying to see him 9th, but eventually does finish down in 12th. A wonderful little battle between him and Lewis Hamilton at an early part of the race, but apart from that, was relatively anonymous. I gave him a 7, which also gives him an overall of a 6 out of 10. Jack Doohan now. Jack Doohan qualifies 17th in the sprint, but finishes up in 16th place. Really just nothing from Jack Doohan, it has to be said. And then in the main race, qualifies 14th. Doesn't finish the race with a puncture at the start. Just nothing. I mean, realistically, I gave him a 3 for the sprint and a 5 for the race. Overall, it's a 4. I saw, again, I had a news pop-up thing on my phone this morning of, is Jack Doohan's future in danger again? And, at this point, you have to say absolutely yes. I mean, I think that was his 7th race, including the Abu Dhabi race that he did last year. And if we want to directly compare him with Colapinto, which is what we're doing, I think Colapinto had 9 races in total for Williams. But if we just look at his first 7 races and compare it to Jack Doohan's first 7 races, I mean, yes, they've both had crashes, but there have been moments in both qualifying and the race in Colapinto's first 7 where all of us kind of had to take a step back and go, wow, that was impressive, that was a great result. And so far with Jax, as much as I like him and I think he's a lovely guy and I want him to do well, there has not been a moment in these first 7 races for him where I've gone, that's really good. That's a really good race. I can't really think of anything he's done so far this year where I can say that's a standout moment for him or that showed tremendous skill or anything like that in the same way that I pretty much instantly could from Franco Colapinto. So, and obviously there is the added pressure on Jack Doohan that since even before he first sat in the car, the rumours of him being kicked out of the car have been there, and of course that will play a factor on him and his confidence, but still, we've seen nothing. And if we're going to directly compare them, Franco Colapinto showed us something instantly. Jack Doohan hasn't. So that swap has been on the cards for a long time. It's getting closer and closer every day because he's really just not showing anything. And who knows, when Colapinto will get put in that car, maybe he'll show nothing as well. And maybe it turns out that the Alpine just is nothing, which wouldn't be shocking whatsoever. But as of right now, it's not looking great for Jack Doohan, and this weekend did not solidify any hope for me of him staying until the end of the season. And honestly, as we sit here right now, I wouldn't be surprised if we get to Imola and Colapinto's there, because we've got a week off. And they love to do it on a week off because it's a triple header after that, and swapping cars in a triple header might be a bit annoying. So who knows? Keep your ears to the ground, everyone. Go across to Pierre Gasly now, who had a good weekend. Points in the sprint race, going from 13th to 8th, of course, like many people, benefited from other people's penalties, but there you go, that's the way it works. Got 1 point on the board in there. Then in the main race, from the pit lane to 13th. A very good return, I thought, from there. In the Alpine, I gave him a 10 for the sprint, a 7 for the main race, an average of an 8 out of 10. Pierre Gasly continues to be very impressive. But here's a man I love to talk about. Lance Stroll is the biggest enigma in the history of Formula One. Because I have seen many times him do just dreadful things. Just be the worst. But then, every now and again, he just does something incredibly special. And you just go, if you could do this every single race, you would be a world champion. Maybe not that far, but you'd be so respected in terms of a driver. Because this went massively under the radar. But in the sprint race, Lance Stroll went from 16th to 5th. Now again, he would have massively benefited from other people's penalties, but you know what? Everyone who didn't have a penalty basically benefited from everyone else's penalties. Lance Stroll went from 16th to 5th. How? In an Aston Martin that was dreadful. I don't know how he did it. Honestly, I have no idea how he did it. It's one of the most impressive drives of the year. It's incredible. When you see not just the pace this weekend, but the pace the Aston has had all weekend, all year long, to do that is insane. He gets more points for Aston Martin. Fernando Alonso is still waiting to score his first point. Lance Stroll just gets a few more. He's the only one scoring points for Aston, and we're 6 races in. We're a quarter of the way into the season, and how many points has he got now? Is it... I'm trying to figure it out. Would it be like 13 points? I'm going to double check. 14 points it is. 14 points for Lance Stroll on the board this year. Fernando Alonso, 0. No one would have predicted that. There's not a person on this planet who would have predicted that at the start of the year. So I gave him a 10 out of 10, obviously, for the sprint. Then the main race comes round. He qualifies 18th. He finishes 16th. He's the last of the guys to finish the race. Back to normal for Lance Stroll. How is this possible? How can you have such a wide difference in like ability from day to day? It's insane. But there you go. I gave him a 6 for the main race. It's a 7 overall for Lance Stroll. I've pressed the wrong button there. Where's he gone? Lance Stroll, 7 out of 10. Unbelievable stuff. Right, here's his teammate Alonso, who had a fantastic qualifying for the sprint race. Qualified 10th, got it into SQ3. But, of course, would be hit by Liam Lawson and DNF from that race. Was in a decent position as well. Looked like maybe the first points were on, but who knows from there. I gave him a 7 for that. In the main race, qualifies down in 17th, but finishes in 15th, only beating Lance Stroll of the guys who finished the actual race. Another 7, an average of a 7. I mean, another one to forget for Fernando Alonso, who is praying to move time faster to get to 2026. Kimi Antonelli, his first ever pole position in the sprint. 18 years old, starting on pole position, but then it kind of just all goes wrong for him from there. Pushed off wide by Piastri at the start, kind of falls down a few places from there. Then there's the incident in the pit lane with Max Verstappen's unsafe release, which means that he had to go round and pit again. So yeah, that just kind of all went wrong. From there, it just was not going right for Kimi Antonelli, but there you go. Yeah, didn't work out for him. Not necessarily his fault. I mean, he could have been a bit more aggressive into turn one and maybe benefited a bit more from there. But, the main thing that screwed him over was having to go through the pit lane twice. And, in the end, he still scored a couple of points. I'm going to give him a 7 for that. In the main race, another fantastic qualifying to put him third, ahead of Oscar Piastri. Then converted that into a 6th place. I think with him, he kind of just got screwed over a little bit by the virtual safety car. It just didn't really work out. At the start of the race, he was in that conversation with the top guys, and it kind of fell away towards the back end. Was very much saved by Ferrari's ineptitude. Otherwise, he could have been like 9th or 10th. But overall, an okay weekend for Kimi Antonelli. I gave him a 7 for the sprint, an 8 for the main race. He gets an 8 overall on there. His teammate, though, continues to be, and I keep on saying this, he's a contender for driver of the season. And I remember at the summer break last year, I did my driver rankings, and I had George Russell very low. And people in the comments were like, oh, you hate him. You just hate him. You just hate George Russell, don't you? No, I just didn't think he was very good last year. This year, I think he's fantastic. Qualifies 5th, turns that into a 4th in the sprint race. And in the main race, goes from 5th to 3rd. Obviously, in the main race, massively benefiting from the virtual safety car. I think out of all the drivers, he was the one who benefited the most from the virtual safety car, but then had the pace at the end to keep Max Verstappen more than a second behind him. Did really well. Another podium for George Russell so far this season. Back to the sprint race. I mean, he was beaten on track by Verstappen and Hamilton, who you have questions of maybe he should have beaten them realistically. So I gave him a 9 for the sprint, a 10 for the main race. It's an average of a 10 though. Nonetheless, another great weekend for George Russell. To Red Bull now, and this is Yuki Tsunoda, who started from the pit lane in the sprint race after qualifying 18th and having a setup change, but he converts that to a very impressive 6th place. He benefited from having the extra formation laps, which means that he had to start from the back of the grid rather than the pit lane, so that gave him a slight benefit there. But from there, did very well. Again, must have benefited from everyone else's penalties, but as we've said, lots of people benefited from them. To be in 6th place, some good points for him there. I gave him a 10 out of 10 for the sprint. Then, in the main race, went from 10th to 10th to pick up another point. I gave him a 6 there, because I thought he was massively off the pace of Max in terms of qualifying and race pace in that race there. But yeah, overall, a 7. A good weekend for Yuki Tsunoda. Here's a difficult one, because Max Verstappen qualified 4th for the sprint and would finish 4th. But after that 10-second penalty for the unsafe release, he is down to 17th place. And it's a hard one to grade because I thought he did very well. And obviously the unsafe release is not his fault at all, because he just had to put his faith in the team and they told him to go and he went. And obviously got the penalty from there. So I thought his race pace was very good. Obviously got passed by Hamilton at the end there. And I mean, that could just be because his front wing was broken. But overall, I thought his actual performance of everything that he could control was very good. I gave him a 7 for the sprint. Then across the main race, a beautiful pole position, a wonderful lap again. And I mean, a few years ago, when we would talk about Max Verstappen, I would often say that, his qualifying needs working on, but the race pace is there. Now his qualifying is absolutely fantastic. Another wonderful pole position where, realistically, it should have been at least one of the McLarens ahead of him. Then in the race itself, of course, has that incident into turn 1 with Lando Norris, but then manages to keep the lead. Some beautiful driving between him and Oscar Piastri as they battled for the lead as well. And then some more very good defensive driving between him and Lando Norris. Loses out 3rd place to Russell because of the virtual safety car. Then he just didn't really have the pace at the end there. But when you see the pace of the McLarens afterwards, where they're 30 seconds ahead of the rest of the field, the fact that he kept both of them behind for as long as he did, and the fact that he got pole position became more and more impressive with every single passing lap. I thought he was absolutely fantastic this weekend. Got the most out of the car. And I mean, man, you could see how much he was struggling with it. The way it was just sliding through the corners. The way that he was locking up basically at every single corner. The fact that he still finished 4th, I thought was absolutely fantastic. So as I said, I gave him a 7 for the sprint, but I gave him a 10 for the main race. I thought he was absolutely fantastic. Overall, though, it is an average of a 9. To Ferrari now. Oh, dear. Right. Lewis Hamilton, a great sprint race. So qualified 7th, but was the first of the top 8 guys to make the change over to the dry tyres. Took that punt there, and it massively paid off for him. Overtook Max Verstappen on the track and finished in 3rd place. Another good sprint result for Lewis Hamilton. Gave him a 10 out of 10 for that one. Then in the main race, a bad qualifying sees him in 12th, but he does come back to finish in 8th, just behind his teammate after a lot of team orders. The Ferrari results this week reminded me a lot of the Mercedes results last year, where Lewis would have a bad qualifying, George would have a good qualifying, but it didn't matter because they would finish next to each other no matter what. Very similar for what has happened in Ferrari here. But yeah, 10 for Lewis in the sprint, 7 for Lewis in the race, an average of an 8 out of 10. And my God, it just gets worse for Charles Leclerc. Our driver of the year last year, but this year has not really been able to show that much, especially in the sprint. He qualified 6th, but did not start the race. A crash on the way to the grid. Again, I think this is the fault of the team. Why are you on inters on that lap? You just put some wets on. It doesn't really matter. The rain was so heavy at that point. It's just, it's a whole thing. It's a hard one to grade because, at the back of my head, I went, well, let's just not grade it. But I went back and saw what I did for Isaac Hadjar in Australia, and I did give him a score of 3 out of 10. And the reason I gave him a 3 was I said, because he's a rookie. Charles Leclerc is not a rookie, and he did not start this race. I'm going to still give him a point for a good qualifying. I'm going to give him a 1 for the sprint, and just call it there, because I don't really know what else I can give him from there. In the main race itself, he qualified 8th, he finished up in 7th. I gave him a 7 out of 10 for that, so average of a 5 for Charles Leclerc. Another weekend to forget in 2025. This man will be happy, though. A wonderful weekend for him. Qualified 2nd in the sprint race, was leading until the virtual safety car came out and handed the lead to his teammate. He ends up finishing in 2nd place, but again, nothing really that he did wrong. Didn't put a foot out of place. Was pretty much perfect. Just the things around him that changed that result. So I gave him a 10 for the sprint. In the main race, not a great qualifying. To have both Verstappen and Antonelli ahead of you in that qualifying when you have a car that fast is not great. But on the Sunday was perfect yet again. A good start. Got past Piastri very quickly. His battling was with Max, who I thought was absolutely perfect in every single way, especially the move he took to take the lead, where he just stayed on the outside, gave Max enough room to make the mistake, did the cutback, took the lead. A beautiful, beautiful move from there. And then, just dominated from the front. Just kept it in the front, 9 seconds ahead of his teammate for a lot of it. Of course, Lando cut that lead down, but was Oscar really pushing? Because he didn't need to, so he was just going from there. And, when we talk about dominating at the front, the thing that always comes to my head is Lando Norris in Singapore last year, where he was in the lead by quite some margin, was quite comfortable, but was still making these silly little mistakes where he was tapping the wall. None of that from Piastri. We didn't see him until the end because he didn't put a foot wrong. Absolutely perfect. 10 out of 10 in both races, giving him an average of a 10. And finally, Lando Norris. Lando Norris qualifies 3rd in the sprint but does win. As we said, massively benefited from the virtual safety car, but that's just a thing that happens. Was wonderful in the sprint race. I give him a 10 out of 10 for that. Then in the main race itself, qualifies 2nd, finishes up in 2nd, gets involved in that incident with Max at the start, then falls down to 6th. A wonderful job to get back through the pack relatively quickly, but, again, he's just stuck behind Max again, and he's just not very aggressive at all. Very cautious in qualifying, very cautious in the race here. And, we're talking about it in Saudi Arabia last time out, when he was stuck behind Hamilton and he fell for the same trick that Hamilton gave him 2 times in a row. Here again, it's just wasting time behind cars that you are so much quicker than. You know, when we see Oscar fighting Max, it's just elbows out from the start to the finish, taking it to him. Whereas with Lando, it's like, okay, I'm just gonna wait. Okay, and I'm gonna wait now. Oh, will I have a look? No, okay, I'm not gonna do. Aha! Here's a move. Okay, I took us both off the track. Here you go. Go through. There you go. Okay, here we go. Right, I'll go again. Will I go? No, I'm not gonna go now. Okay, will I go? And in the end, it just looked like Max just gave up. Max just was like, oh, for God's sake, just go through. I've got a race to do. I'm not gonna beat you. Just go through. And it's just like, come on, man. Get your elbows out. Take the fight to him. Come on. So in the end, I gave him an 8 for the race because he was. You know, it just wasn't there. But overall, it's still an average of a 9 out of 10. A very, very respectable score there. So, on the board, we have 10 out of 10 for Oscar Piastri, George Russell and Alex Albon. The lowest score of the weekend goes to Liam Lawson with a 3 out of 10. They are our driver ratings for the Miami Grand Prix. We're back next... Not when? What was I going to say then? Jesus Christ. We're back tomorrow for the Stop and Go F1 Retro Review in 1981. Next race weekend is in Imola, so that will cover that in 2 weeks' time. But there is a video out here on the channel on Friday. If you are a Mansell Mustache member, you can already see it right now. But we delve into the old F1 theory of does having children make you a slower driver, and how will that impact Max Verstappen? That's available now for the Mansell Mustache members. Everyone else, it will come out on Friday. I will see you then. Until next time, have a good one. Goodbye.